They said the first wolf burned because he deserved it. They said the second burned because he touched what wasn't his. They said the third burned because fate had marked her as something unholy. But Elara remembered the fourth. The one who didn't scream. The one who didn't blister. The one who didn't fall to his knees, howling in agony like the others. He only stared. Stared as if he had known her long before that moment. As if he had been waiting, aching, for the fire she carried in her palms. As if her curse was the key to something he had been running from all his life. The others fled from her. He stepped closer. She could still see the way his shadow stretched across the village stones, long and predatory, swallowing the moonlight entirely. Could still hear the rasp of his voice when he spoke the words that changed the course of her life forever. "My king has been searching for you." And that night, for the first time, Elara understood something terrifying. Her fire wasn't meant to destroy every alpha. It was meant for him, the one destined to ruin her, or save her, or both. Chapter 1. The morning it happened, the sun rose red, blood-red, angry, as though even the sky itself sensed what the day would demand of her. Elara drew her cloak tighter around her shoulders as she stepped into the village square. The winter wind knifed along her skin, lifting her dark hair and stirring dust across the training grounds. Wolves, shifted and unshifted, watched her from a distance, eyes narrowed, lips tight with the same fear they pretended was caution. She was used to the stares, used to the whispers, used to being the omen children used to frighten each other. But today was different. Today was the alpha evaluation, the ritual every pack, no matter how small, was required to perform. A test of strength, control, dominance. A tradition older than memory. And a tradition Elara dreaded like death. Because every time an alpha touched her, they burned. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Literally. Blisters, scorched skin, even smoke rising from their palms. The first time it happened, she had been 11. The pup who tried to grab her braid had collapsed screaming, the scent of singed fur choking the air. The second time, she had been forced to defend herself. The alpha in training who shoved her into a wall had staggered back blister-armed and snarling with humiliation. After the third, the elders gave her a name she would never escape. Curseborn. Elara swallowed hard as the pack formed a loose circle around her. The elders murmured. The children hid behind their parents. Snow crunched under boots and paws. Someone spat into the dirt. Someone whispered, "It's unnatural." Another muttered, "She should be taken away." Her stomach tightened. The evaluation commander, a towering man with silver-streaked hair and the posture of a predator accustomed to being obeyed, motioned her forward. "Elara of Ashridge," he called loudly enough for the entire village to hear. "Step into the circle." Her breath misted the air. Her heartbeat thundered. She stepped forward. "Remove your gloves," he ordered. The world seemed to hold its breath. Elara hesitated only a moment before pulling them off. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the knowledge of what would inevitably follow. Beneath the gloves, her skin glowed faintly with an inner heat, like embers buried beneath ash. "And now," the commander barked to the crowd, "we proceed." 3 alpha trainees stepped forward, broad-shouldered, confident, brimming with dominance they believed was their birthright. They circled her as if she were prey in the wrong clearing. "This is unnecessary," she said quietly. "You know how this ends." "We test all threats," snarled the first, cracking his knuckles. "No exceptions." "Especially abominations," muttered the second. The third didn't speak. He only looked at her with something cold enough to make her stomach twist. The commander raised his hand. "Begin." The first alpha lunged. His hand closed around Elara's wrist. Elara gasped, not from pain, but from the sudden surge of energy that shot through her veins. Heat roared to life beneath her skin, bursting outward in a wave of invisible fire. The alpha screamed. His palm blistered instantly, angry red welts rising as he tore himself away from her, stumbling backward onto all fours, eyes wide with horror. Smoke curled from his skin. Goddess, someone whispered. She didn't even move. The second alpha seized her other arm, trying to overpower her quickly before she could react. The moment flesh met flesh, a sharp hiss cut through the air. His skin seared as though pressed against molten metal. He howled, jaw snapping in pain, and dropped to his knees as smoke curled from between his fingers. "Stop this," a woman cried. "She'll kill them." No, she wouldn't. She never meant to hurt them. But intent had never mattered. The third alpha strode forward, fury darkening his features. He grabbed her shoulders with both hands, squeezing, shaking her as though trying to rattle the curse out of her. Elara choked on a sob. And then, fire. Not visible, not literal flame, but a burning so intense it tore a ragged scream from the alpha's throat. The stench of scorched leather filled the air. His grip loosened. He collapsed onto his side, clutching his blistered hands to his chest. The pack recoiled. What is she? She shouldn't be allowed to stay here. She'll set the whole pack on fire. She's a threat, worse than any rogue. Elara's breath came in sharp, shaky bursts. She pressed her hands to her chest, desperate to contain the heat that pulsed beneath her ribs like a living thing. "I didn't want this," she whispered, though no one cared. The commander stepped forward, face set in grim resignation. "Enough. The evaluation is complete." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "She's dangerous. She's cursed. She will bring ruin." The commander lifted his hand for silence. Elara of Ashridge. But his proclamation never came, because the ground trembled beneath their feet. Hoofbeats thundered across the frozen earth. Wolves shifted in alarm. A cold wind swept through the square, carrying with it the scent of iron and power. Black-armored riders appeared at the village gates, 6 of them, their cloaks whipping in the wind. Their armor bore the crimson insignia of a wolf's head crowned with thorns. Gasps erupted. The Crimson King's Guard. What are they doing here? Has someone angered the court? The commander stiffened, giving a shallow bow as the riders approached. One dismounted. He was tall, shoulders broad beneath his dark cloak. His face was hidden by a hood, shadows swallowing every feature. But his presence sucked the warmth from the air. He walked through the parted crowd without looking at anyone, until his gaze lifted beneath the hood and locked onto Elara. Her heart stuttered. She couldn't see his eyes, yet she felt them, felt the weight of his attention settle on her like a hand against her throat. When he spoke, his voice was deep enough to vibrate through her bones. "Elara of Ashridge," he said. "By decree of the Crimson King, you are to come with us." The villagers froze. The commander swallowed. "On what grounds?" "On grounds," the hooded man replied, "that she is no longer yours to test, to fear, or to judge." He took one step closer. "And because," he said softly, "my king has been searching for her." Elara's breath caught. Her hands trembled. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she didn't. Because as the hooded man extended his gloved hand, the air around her shifted. The heat inside her chest pulsed once, violently. And he did not flinch, did not recoil, did not burn. He only murmured, "You belong to the Crimson King now." The pack stared in horror. Elara stared in fear. And the hooded man? He stood as though this moment had been written in blood long before either of them were born. A chill swept her spine. Because for the first time in her life, someone touched her fire. And didn't burn. Chapter 2. The journey began in chains. Cold, unforgiving iron wrapped around Elara's wrists, sealing her fate with a finality that echoed louder than the hoofbeats of the mounted soldiers surrounding her. Snow lashed at her face as the riders drove their horses forward, heading straight into the vast, frost-laden mountains that separated her village from the Crimson King's realm. Every exhale turned to mist. Every breath felt like swallowing knives. But none of that frightened her as much as the hooded guard riding closest to her, the only one who didn't burn when he touched her. His name had not been given. His face remained hidden. But his presence clung to her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. He was the one who had grabbed her arm when she hesitated to mount. The moment his gloved fingers closed around her, a burst of heat had surged up her skin. But he didn't blister, didn't flinch, didn't even react. Instead, he had murmured 3 words she still felt pressing against her ribs. "Do not struggle." In any other voice, the words might have sounded like a threat. In his, they were something else entirely, firm but quiet, heavy with an authority that felt frighteningly familiar. Now, as they traveled deeper into the mountains, Elara stole another glance at him. The hood concealed everything but his mouth, a sharply cut line that spoke of discipline, and something darker. Snow gathered on his cloak, yet none seemed to melt against the heat she knew radiated from him. The others feared her touch. He barely noticed it. The riders spoke little as they climbed higher. The ground turned treacherous beneath the horses' hooves, frost giving way to sheets of ice. The wind howled between jagged peaks like ancient spirits mourning something long forgotten. "How much farther?" one of the soldiers muttered. "Until the summit crossing," another replied grimly. "If the storm worsens, we'll ride through the night." Elara shivered, feeling the cold bite through her thin cloak. Every muscle in her body trembled. Heat always radiated from her skin, but storms like this swallowed even her unnatural warmth whole. At last, the hooded man spoke. "Stop." The command sliced clean through the wind. The convoy halted instantly. He turned toward Elara, his hood shifting slightly. For the first time, she sensed, not saw, but felt, the weight of his stare fully settle on her. "You're freezing." She stiffened. "I'm fine." "You're shivering." "I said I'm fine," she whispered, though her teeth were beginning to chatter. He dismounted in a single, fluid movement. Snow crunched beneath his boots. Without saying another word, he unclasped his cloak and swept it around her shoulders. Elara gasped at the unexpected warmth. The cloak smelled faintly of smoke and pine sap, an intoxicating, grounding scent that made her pulse flicker with something she didn't want to name. "I don't," she began. "You'll need it," he interrupted. "The cold here kills faster than claws." Her throat tightened. "Why help me?" A silence stretched between them, thin, taut, dangerous. When he finally answered, his voice was low enough that only she could hear it. "Because you are not to die before we reach the king." Cold prickled her spine. Not to die before. The meaning loomed between them, heavy and ominous. She looked down at the cloak, its deep crimson fabric too finely woven, too warm to belong to a common soldier. She swallowed. "You're not like the others," she murmured. The guard tilted his head, as though studying her words with interest. Snowflakes collected on the edge of his hood, refusing to melt. "No," he agreed quietly. "I am not." Before she could question him further, he mounted again with inhuman grace. "Ride," he ordered the others. The convoy moved. Elara clutched the cloak tighter, feeling a strange heat spreading across her shoulders, not burning, not painful, but alive. The storm worsened. By nightfall, the sky had swallowed the moon entirely. Lightning cracked between the peaks. The horses grew restless, tossing their heads as wind roared like a living beast. The riders pushed through it, grim and unyielding. Elara's eyes began to blur from exhaustion. She slumped in the saddle more than once, her body swaying dangerously. Each time she did, a gloved hand shot out to steady her. The hooded guard. Always him. "Stay awake," he warned. "I'm trying." "Try harder." His tone wasn't cruel. It was strained. "Concern?" She shook the thought away. That was impossible. No one had ever shown concern for her. Not truly. Not sincerely. Not without fearing her or what she could do. But when the storm broke suddenly, exploding across the sky in a shower of white-blue lightning, the horses reared, and everything descended into chaos. A bolt struck a ridge above them. Snow and ice fractured in an instant. The mountain groaned. "Avalanche!" someone screamed. The world lurched violently. The riders spurred their horses, but the path was too narrow, the entire slope shifting like a beast waking from sleep. Snow thundered toward them, swallowing the trail. Elara's horse bucked wildly. Her chains rattled as she slipped sideways. And suddenly she was airborne. For a heartbeat, she felt weightless. Then, a hand seized her waist. The hooded guard pulled her from the collapsing saddle, hauling her against him with brutal strength. They crashed into the snow as the horses scattered in panic. The avalanche roared past them, a monstrous cascade of white swallowing the trail they'd just ridden. The hooded guard rolled, shielding her with his body. Snow buried them. Darkness crushed in. Elara couldn't breathe. Panic clawed at her throat until she felt it. Warmth. His warmth. Unlike the cold, crippling heat she inflicted on others, this was steady, controlled, grounding. She drew a shuddering breath. The guard shifted slightly above her, bracing himself on one forearm to prevent crushing her. "You're alive," he murmured. His lips were close, too close. She could feel the ghost of his breath against her cheek. Her pulse fluttered. Why protect me like that?" she breathed. Silence. Snow fell lightly over the hollow they'd landed in, muted and still. When he answered, his voice held something fierce. "Because losing you is not an option." Her stomach tightened, heat pooling low and sharp. She didn't understand him. Didn't understand any of this. Before she could speak, another voice shouted from above. "Commander. Elara. Are they alive?" The hooded guard stiffened. "Commander?" Elara's eyes widened. He wasn't just a soldier. He was the leader of them. He stood slowly, brushing snow from his armor, and extended a hand to help her up. She hesitated, then placed her palm in his. Once more, he did not burn. Once more, something inside her shifted. The climb back to the trail was brutal, but when they finally reached the others, every rider bowed their head to the hooded man. "Commander," they greeted in unison. Elara's breath hitched. Commander of the Crimson Guard. A man loyal only to the king. A man trained in secrets and shadows. A man who could touch her fire and not fall screaming. A man who had risked his life to shield her. He mounted again, expression unreadable beneath his hood. "We move," he ordered. "The king awaits." Hours later, after exhaustion had nearly undone her, after the storm had finally weakened into trembling flakes, the convoy reached the gates of the Crimson Capital. Elara had seen castles in books. None prepared her for this. The fortress rose from the mountains like a creature carved from pure night. Towers of obsidian stone pierced the clouds. Bridges arched like the spines of monstrous beasts. Torches burned blue along the ramparts, their flames whispering with strange magic. Elara's horse faltered as they approached the gate. The guards there, wolves in black armor, stiffened upon seeing her. "It's her," one whispered. "The curse-born." "Gods help us," murmured another. She clenched her jaw. The hooded commander said nothing as they passed through the towering gates into a city built of shadow and crimson light. The air was heavy, thick with power. At the heart of it all stood the palace, a massive citadel crowned with blood-red banners. When they reached the entrance, the commander dismounted and approached her shackles. He unlocked them slowly, his gloved fingers brushing her skin. Even through leather, she felt the jolt of warmth. "You will walk from here," he said softly. "To where?" she whispered. He hesitated only a moment. "To the Crimson King." Her breath caught. "And what will he do with me?" The commander's jaw tightened. "Whatever he wishes." The doors opened. A blast of heat rolled out, a warmth that felt nothing like her own. Elara stumbled forward, heart racing. She didn't know if she was walking toward salvation or doom. Only that the crimson-eyed shadows of the palace watched her enter, and the hooded commander watched her go with a tension she didn't understand. Not yet. But soon. Because the king she was about to meet was not the monster she expected, and the commander she left behind was not who she believed him to be. If you're enjoying this story, please hit subscribe to my channel. Your support helps me create more episodes, more worlds, and more unforgettable characters. Don't forget to comment your favorite moment from this chapter. Chapter 3. The doors to the Crimson King's throne hall opened with the groaning weight of something ancient, older than kingdoms, older than wolves, older perhaps even than curses. Heat rolled out from the chamber in a slow, suffocating wave, brushing across Elara's skin like the breath of a sleeping beast. She hesitated at the threshold. The crimson stone beneath her feet pulsed faintly, as though the palace itself had a heartbeat. Or perhaps it was simply her own pulse ricocheting painfully against her ribs. "Enter," commanded a voice behind her. The hooded commander had reappeared, silent, looming, unreadable. His tone left no room for resistance. Elara stepped forward, her thin shoes whispering across polished obsidian floors as she crossed into a hall larger than any cathedral she'd ever imagined. The ceiling soared high above, disappearing into darkness. Massive pillars lined the room, carved with scenes of wolves and kings locked in eternal battle. Between them, braziers burned with blue flames, casting cold, flickering shadows across the crimson banners that draped the walls. And at the far end, the throne. Forged of molten stone and blackened metal, it rose like a crown torn from the jaws of a dying star. Upon it sat a figure who seemed carved from night itself, still, powerful, unfathomable. The Crimson King. Elara had heard tales of him. Every child had. Whispers of a ruler born not from mortal lineage, but from the blood of an ancient wolf god. A king whose fury could crack mountains. A king whose shadow could drive men mad. But nothing had prepared her for this. He did not look at her at first. He didn't need to. Power radiated from him like heat from an inferno, dense, overwhelming, coiled tight beneath his skin. His posture was relaxed, one arm resting on the armrest of his throne, fingers drumming lightly in a rhythm that did not match any mortal heartbeat. The air around him shimmered faintly, as if refusing to touch him. The commander stepped beside her and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he announced, "we have returned." The king lifted his head. Torches dimmed. Silence fell like a blade. And Elara felt her lungs seize. His eyes, gods, his eyes were not natural. Not alpha. Not wolf. They glowed. Not red, as she expected, but a molten gold. Bright, ancient, terrifyingly alive. They flickered as though lit from within by an unseen flame. When his gaze settled on her, heat rolled through the chamber, thick enough to taste. "Bring her forward," the king murmured. The commander's hand closed around her elbow. His glove swallowed her heat once more, without flinching. And she was pulled closer to the throne. Closer to the predator who watched her with the stillness of something carved from obsidian and grief. Closer to the truth she wasn't ready to confront. Elara's breath hitched as she reached the steps of the throne. She lowered her gaze instinctively, her fingers curling inward as if terrified of accidentally brushing against someone. The king rose slowly. He moved with a kind of lethal grace that spoke of battles fought and won before he ever learned to walk. His long coat of dark crimson leather swept across the stone like a living shadow as he descended the steps. Every soldier in the hall bowed. Elara felt her knees weaken. When he stopped in front of her, she forced herself to look up. And she froze. Because the Crimson King did not look old, did not look monstrous, did not look like the tyrant the stories had promised. He was young, far younger than she expected, perhaps late 20s. But his eyes, those ancient, burning eyes, betrayed centuries. He studied her with a calmness that was almost cruel. "So," he said in a voice like velvet dragged over steel, "this is the girl." Elara swallowed hard. I'm no one." The king's lips twitched upward, not in amusement, but something sharper. "Your village disagrees," he murmured. "As do the reports my commander brought me. You burn wolves with a single touch." "It's not something I control," she whispered. "Good." His tone glided through the air, slow and dangerous. Uncontrolled power is often the purest. Her heart stuttered at the words. He stepped closer, too close. She felt heat radiating from him in waves, but it wasn't like her fire. Hers was destructive, frantic, desperate to escape her. His was controlled, contained, the heat of a star in chains. "Look at me," he commanded gently. Her chin lifted before she could think. He reached forward. His fingers brushed her chin. She braced for the familiar eruption, the scream, the burn, the acrid scent of blistered flesh. But nothing happened. No heat. No pain. Only the quiet shock of contact. His skin was warm.
Alive.
Unscarred. She stared up at him in horror and disbelief. "You're not burning," she breathed. "Indeed," he said softly. "And I imagine you're wondering why." His eyes were molten gold. Her reflection trembled in them. A small crease formed between his brows, as if something about her presence unsettled him too. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're not human," he finished.
No.
"Not fully." Her pulse slammed against her ribs. "What are you?" she whispered. His jaw flexed, as though the question cut deeper than she intended. "Cursed," he replied simply. "As are you." She flinched. He noticed. He always noticed. Without warning, the king's hand slid from her chin to her wrist. She gasped. It wasn't painful. It wasn't burning. It wasn't anything her body was used to. It was absorbing. Her heat, her curse, drained into him, drawn into his palm like water pulled through sand. Tendrils of warmth rushed from her skin into his, disappearing beneath his flesh. What are you doing?" she breathed, panic rising like a tide. "Testing you," he replied calmly. She tried to pull away. He tightened his grip, not painfully, but in certainty. "Your fire," he murmured, lifting her wrists slightly as warmth surged into him, "does not harm me. Tell me, Elara, has that ever happened before?" "And no," she choked.
No.
He tilted his head. "Not even once?" Her voice trembled. "Never." Something flickered in his golden eyes, something dark, conflicted, devastatingly human. "Then we have a great deal to learn about one another," he said softly. She didn't understand.
Didn't want to understand.
Didn't want to be this vulnerable in front of someone so impossibly powerful. But he didn't release her. His thumb brushed her pulse. Her heat pulsed back against him, wild and startled. His expression tightened. "Interesting," he whispered, almost to himself. "Very interesting." He finally released her wrist and stepped back. Immediately, the room felt colder. "Commander." The hooded man stepped forward silently. "Take her to the East Wing," the king instructed. "She will be given chambers adjacent to the study. I want her examined by the court seers before sunrise." Elara stiffened. "Examined? By who?" The commander answered. "By those who understand curses." Her stomach twisted. "I'm not cursed," she insisted. Both men looked at her. The king's expression softened, not with pity, but with a terrible kind of knowing. "My dear girl," he murmured, "you burn alphas with a touch and survived the birth of a power that should have killed you. If that is not a curse, then it is something far worse." Her throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to deny everything, to insist that she was just a frightened girl from a forgotten village. But her fire hummed beneath her skin, restless, pulsing slowly as if waking to a truth she had spent her entire life trying to ignore. The king turned away, dismissing her as easily as he had claimed her. "Bring her back to me tomorrow," he commanded. "There is much she and I need to discuss." The soldiers bowed. But the king paused halfway up the steps, his gold eyes flickering back toward her. "And, Commander," he added quietly. "Yes, Your Majesty? Ensure she does not wander into the West Wing." A muscle in the commander's jaw twitched. "As you wish." Elara frowned. "What's in the West Wing?" The king didn't answer. He simply looked at her in silence, an unreadable expression passing across his face before he finally turned away. It was not the look of a king addressing a prisoner, or a curiosity, or even a threat. It was the look of someone who knew a secret that would destroy her. The commander led her through winding corridors lined with torches and carved reliefs depicting wolves in every stage of transformation. No one spoke. Elara clutched the crimson cloak tighter, her mind racing. Finally, she broke the silence. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew the king wouldn't burn when he touched me." The commander didn't slow. "Yes."
How?
A long pause. "Because," he said quietly, "nothing burns him." she faltered. Nothing. Not fire. Not blades. Not time. Her breath hitched. What about you? She asked before she could stop herself. Why didn't you burn when you touched me? For the first time since she met him, the commander hesitated. The hood dipped slightly, as if he were studying the floor, or gathering the strength to lie. When he finally answered, his voice was low. Because I am not so different from him. A chill swept through her. She was still trying to understand his words when something growled behind a nearby wall. Deep, resonant, not entirely human. Elara stiffened. What was that? The commander did not answer, but his hand closed around her arm. A gentle warning, or a quiet plea. Do not ask about the West Wing, he murmured.
His voice had changed. Thinner.
Tighter. Afraid. The commander, who had ridden through a storm, shielded her from an avalanche, and walked into the Crimson King's throne room without flinching, was afraid. Of what? Or who? Elara opened her mouth to question him, but at that moment, a whisper drifted through the corridor.
Soft. Faint.
Impossible. Elara. She spun around, heart pounding. Did you hear that? She whispered. The commander froze. Elara. The voice was not human, nor was it unfamiliar. It sounded like her name spoken through broken teeth and smoke. Elara. She took a step back. The commander grabbed her shoulders abruptly. Look at me, he ordered. His voice trembled. It's just the wind, he said firmly. But his hands were shaking. No, she whispered. That was... Elara, the voice whispered again. This time the commander's grip tightened, pulling her sharply toward him. We are leaving, he said, his voice raw. As he dragged her away from the whispering darkness, she felt it watching her, calling her, knowing her, and she realized, whatever hid in the West Wing was no mere creature. It knew her name, and it wanted her. By the time they reached her new chambers, Elara felt as though the walls of the palace were breathing around her. Watching. Listening. The commander paused at her door. You're safe here, he said, but his voice didn't match the words. Safe from what? She whispered. A long, terrible silence passed. Finally, he answered. From him, he said. From who? The commander's hood turned slightly toward the West Wing. And Elara swore she saw golden eyes staring back at them from the darkness. Chapter 4. Elara did not sleep that night. How could she? The palace felt alive around her, breathing in the quiet, sighing with every shift of cold wind. Shadows curled along the floorboards as if their edges were wet ink. The walls hummed faintly, a resonance she felt more in her bones than her ears. And somewhere in the distance, something whispered her name. She stared at the door long after the commander left her, refusing to lie down. Her chambers were far more luxurious than anything she had ever known. Soft carpets, heavy crimson drapes, a bed piled with embroidered blankets. But luxury didn't comfort her. Not when she felt watched. Not when she knew something else roamed these halls after dark. Not when she remembered the commander's final words. You are safe from him. But he hadn't said who he was. The king? Impossible. She'd just been in his presence. He was unnerving, yes, but controlled, powerful, unshaken. A beast? The palace was too ordered, too clean to house something feral. Unless the palace was ordered because something feral needed caging. A low shiver slid through her. Elara. The whisper came again, soft, almost coaxing. Her breath caught. No wind produced sound like that. No draft shaped itself into syllables. No imagination was that precise. Someone or something knew her name. And the whisper came from the West Wing. She wrapped the crimson cloak tighter around her shoulders and forced herself to breathe slowly. Don't be stupid, she told herself. Don't go investigate. Don't open the door. Don't walk into darkness, you know you cannot fight. But even as she whispered these warnings, her feet moved toward the door. A pull she didn't understand, deep, instinctive, urged her forward. As if the whisper lodged itself beneath her ribs and tugged gently every time she exhaled. She touched the handle, and the door opened on its own. Her pulse slammed. The corridor beyond was empty. No guards. No servants. No patrols. Too empty. The palace had seemed bustling earlier, filled with footsteps and distant chatter. Now it was silent, as though the entire place held its breath. Elara, the voice drifted from the west wing. Her heart lurched. She stepped into the hallway before she could stop herself and followed the sound. The east wing corridors were lit by steady torches, but as she approached the central spine of the palace, where east met west, the flames dimmed to embers. Shadows thickened, twisting across carved wolves on the walls.
The air changed.
Warmer,
Heavier.
charged with something ancient. She felt it on her skin, a faint vibration, like heat trapped beneath stone. Her fire stirred in response, pulsing softly beneath her palms. She had felt this exact sensation once before, when the Crimson King had touched her wrist. Her breath hitched. Elara, the voice murmured again. Closer. She reached a massive archway engraved with blood-red runes. The symbols pulsed faintly, as though reacting to her presence. A warning? A barrier? Or an invitation? She stepped closer, raising a hand toward the nearest rune. A hand grabbed her wrist before she could touch it. She gasped and whirled. The hooded commander stood behind her, silent, breath uneven, his grip tight enough to bruise. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low, strained. "What is this place?" she demanded, struggling against his hold. "The West Wing," he said. "You were forbidden to come near it." "I heard something," she whispered. "Someone whispered my name." His fingers tightened around her wrist. "Ignore it." "I can't." "You must." She yanked her hand free. "Tell me what's in there." His hood shifted slightly, his jaw clenching. "Nothing you should know about." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I will give." The runes pulsed again. Heat radiated outward. The commander flinched. "Elara," he said quietly, his voice slipping into something almost pleading. "If you value your life, turn around."
Now.
Her breath trembled. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are you afraid?" Silence. He didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Then, from behind the runes, a heavy thud shook the wall. Elara gasped as the stone trembled beneath her feet. Another thud, then a low, guttural growl, so deep it vibrated through her bones. Something enormous moved in the darkness behind the sealed archway. "Elara," the whisper came again, but now it was layered beneath the growl. A distorted voice tangled with a beastly rumble. Her heart lurched painfully. The commander grabbed her shoulders. "You must go," he hissed, "before it fully wakes." "It," she whispered. He froze.
So did she.
The growl deepened, sliding into a roar so fierce the torches flickered violently, almost extinguishing. "Elara." This time, the voice was unmistakably a beast's, raspy, hungry, longing. Her knees weakened. She stared at the runes, terror spreading cold and sharp across her throat. "What is that?" she breathed. The commander did not answer, but the fear in his silence was answer enough. "Commander." The hall plunged into stillness. Elara turned. The Crimson King approached them, silent, shadowed, radiating a heat that made the runes sizzle faintly. His golden eyes gleamed in the dim corridor, flickering like trapped fire. The commander bowed immediately. "Your Majesty." Elara took a step back. The king's gaze slid to her, slow, sharp, assessing. "You disobeyed me," he said softly. For words. Calm, quiet, but they cut like blades. Elara swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to. I just heard." "I know what you heard." Her pulse stuttered. "I know," he repeated, "because he calls for you." The runes pulsed violently. The commander stiffened. Elara whispered, "Who calls for me?" The king's jaw tightened. "The one you must never meet. The one who would destroy you if he could reach you." He stepped closer, too close, until his heat enveloped her entirely. She trembled, not from fear, but from something more dangerous. The king lifted a hand. Her breath caught, but not from fear this time. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, his fingers barely touching her skin. Her fire didn't surge, didn't burn him, didn't even flicker. He absorbed the heat as though born for it. Elara, he murmured, his voice rougher now, you walk too close to the edge of something you cannot comprehend. She stiffened. Then tell me. His gaze darkened. No, he said. You are not ready. I deserve to know. You deserve to live, he interrupted sharply. And stepping into that wing will take that from you. Her heart thundered. He knows my name. He should not, the king whispered, voice thick with something like grief. And yet, she whispered back, he does. The king exhaled, a slow, broken sound. Commander, he said without looking away from her, take her back to her chambers. Yes, your majesty. The commander reached for her arm. But the king caught her wrist first. Heat pulsed between them. Her curse surged, but he absorbed it instantly, pulling it into his palms as though drinking from a well. His eyes darkened. Elara, he murmured, voice low, you were brought here for a reason. Do not force me to bind you until you understand what that reason is. Her breath quivered. I won't run, she whispered. He closed his eyes briefly, as though her words hit somewhere too raw. When he opened them, gold fire swirled in his gaze. Good, he said softly. Because if you did, he would find you. Her stomach dropped. Who? She breathed. The king stepped back. Your monster, he said. The one fate tied you to long before you were born. The commander led her away quickly, as though distance alone could keep the beast's voice from reaching her. But the whisper followed her long after the runes dimmed behind her. Elara, she stumbled. Stop. Stop calling me. The commander tightened his grip on her arm. It hears your fire, he whispered. It always has. They reached her door. He released her, stepping back as though afraid to linger. Listen to me, he said, voice low. If you hear him again, do not follow. Why? His hood dipped. Because he does not call for many things, he breathed. But he calls for you. Her stomach nodded. And if I went, she whispered. He shifted, arms rigid at his sides. Then, he said quietly, the king would not get to you in time. Her breath stilled. The commander bowed once, deep and trembling, before turning away. For the first time since meeting him, he looked like a man afraid of what came next. And for the first time, Elara realized. It wasn't the king he feared. It was whatever lived behind those runes. Whatever whispered her name. Whatever knew her. Elara didn't sleep. She returned to the window overlooking the courtyard, watching red lanterns swing in the wind. Her breath fogged the cold glass. A shape moved below. Her pulse spiked. The Crimson King stood alone in the courtyard, staring up at the stars. His cloak fluttered behind him, the crimson fabric shimmering in torchlight. He looked exhausted, haunted, as though some unbearable weight pressed against him from inside. And then, he lifted a hand to his chest. A wince twisted his features.
Pain.
Raw, unguarded pain. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked less like a king, less like a ruler forged in fire. He looked like a man breaking. Her heart lurched. She stepped into the hallway before she could stop herself and followed the sound. The east wing corridors were lit by steady torches, but as she approached the central spine of the palace, where east met west, the flames dimmed to embers. Shadows thickened, twisting across carved wolves on the walls. The air changed. Warmer, heavier, charged with something ancient. She felt it on her skin, a faint vibration, like heat trapped beneath stone. Her fire stirred in response, pulsing softly beneath her palms. She had felt this exact sensation once before, when the Crimson King had touched her wrist. Her breath hitched. Elara, the voice murmured again. Closer. She reached a massive archway engraved with blood-red runes. The symbols pulsed faintly, as though reacting to her presence. A warning? A barrier? Or an invitation? She stepped closer, raising a hand toward the nearest rune. A hand grabbed her wrist before she could touch it. She gasped and whirled. The hooded commander stood behind her, silent, breath uneven, his grip tight enough to bruise. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice low, strained. What is this place? She demanded, struggling against his hold. The West Wing, he said. You were forbidden to come near it. I heard something, she whispered. Someone whispered my name. His fingers tightened around her wrist. Ignore it. I can't. You must. She yanked her hand free. Tell me what's in there. His hood shifted slightly, his jaw clenching. Nothing you should know about. That's not an answer. It's the only one I will give. The runes pulsed again. Heat radiated outward. The commander flinched. Elara, he said quietly, his voice slipping into something almost pleading. If you value your life, turn around. Now. Her breath trembled. I don't understand, she whispered. Why are you afraid? Silence. He didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Then, from behind the runes, a heavy thud shook the wall. Elara gasped as the stone trembled beneath her feet. Another thud, then a low, guttural growl, so deep it vibrated through her bones. Something enormous moved in the darkness behind the sealed archway. Elara, the whisper came again, but now it was layered beneath the growl. A distorted voice tangled with a beastly rumble. Her heart lurched painfully. The commander grabbed her shoulders. You must go, he hissed, before it fully wakes. She whispered. He froze.
So, did she?
The growl deepened, sliding into a roar so fierce the torches flickered violently, almost extinguishing. Elara, this time, the voice was unmistakably a beast's, raspy, hungry, longing. Her knees weakened. She stared at the runes, terror spreading cold and sharp across her throat. What is that? She breathed. The commander did not answer, but the fear in his silence was answer enough. Commander. The hall plunged into stillness. Elara turned. The Crimson King approached them, silent, shadowed, radiating a heat that made the runes sizzle faintly. His golden eyes gleamed in the dim corridor, flickering like trapped fire. The commander bowed immediately. Your Majesty. Elara took a step back. The king's gaze slid to her, slow, sharp, assessing. You disobeyed me, he said softly. For words. Calm, quiet. But they cut like blades. Elara swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to. I just heard. I know what you heard. Her pulse stuttered. I know, he repeated, because he calls for you. The runes pulsed violently. The commander stiffened. Elara whispered, Who calls for me? The king's jaw tightened. The one you must never meet. The one who would destroy you if he could reach you. He stepped closer, too close, until his heat enveloped her entirely. She trembled, not from fear, but from something more dangerous. The king lifted a hand. Her breath caught, but not from fear this time. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, his fingers barely touching her skin. Her fire didn't surge, didn't burn him, didn't even flicker. He absorbed the heat as though born for it. Elara, he murmured, his voice rougher now, you walk too close to the edge of something you cannot comprehend. She stiffened. Then tell me. His gaze darkened. No, he said. You are not ready. I deserve to know. You deserve to live, he interrupted sharply. And stepping into that wing will take that from you. Her heart thundered. He knows my name. He should not, the king whispered, voice thick with something like grief. And yet, she whispered back, he does. The king exhaled, a slow, broken sound. Commander, he said without looking away from her. Take her back to her chambers. Yes, your majesty. The commander reached for her arm. But the king caught her wrist first. Heat pulsed between them. Her curse surged, but he absorbed it instantly, pulling it into his palms as though drinking from a well. His eyes darkened. Elara, he murmured, voice low, you were brought here for a reason. Do not force me to bind you until you understand what that reason is. Her breath quivered. I won't run, she whispered. He closed his eyes briefly, as though her words hit somewhere too raw. When he opened them, gold fire swirled in his gaze. Good, he said softly, because if you did, he would find you. Her stomach dropped. Who? She breathed. The king stepped back. "Your monster," he said. "The one fate tied you to long before you were born." The commander led her away quickly, as though distance alone could keep the beast's voice from reaching her. But the whisper followed her long after the runes dimmed behind her. "Elara," she stumbled. "Stop. Stop calling me." The commander tightened his grip on her arm. "It hears your fire," he whispered. "It always has." They reached her door. He released her, stepping back as though afraid to linger. "Listen to me," he said, voice low. "If you hear him again, do not follow." "Why?" His hood dipped. "Because he does not call for many things," he breathed. "But he calls for you." Her stomach nodded. "And if I went?" she whispered. He shifted, arms rigid at his sides. "Then," he said quietly, "the king would not get to you in time." Her breath stilled. The commander bowed once, deep and trembling, before turning away. For the first time since meeting him, he looked like a man afraid of what came next. And for the first time, Elara realized. It wasn't the king he feared. It was whatever lived behind those runes. Whatever whispered her name. Whatever knew her. Elara didn't sleep. She returned to the window overlooking the courtyard, watching red lanterns swing in the wind. Her breath fogged the cold glass. A shape moved below. Her pulse spiked. The Crimson King stood alone in the courtyard, staring up at the stars. His cloak fluttered behind him, the crimson fabric shimmering in torchlight. He looked exhausted, haunted, as though some unbearable weight pressed against him from inside. And then, he lifted a hand to his chest. A wince twisted his features.
Pain.
Raw, unguarded pain. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked less like a king, less like a ruler forged in fire. He looked like a man breaking. Her heart lurched. Before she could think, her hand lifted to the window pane, mirroring the way he touched his own chest. As if feeling her gaze, he looked up. Golden eyes locked onto hers across the courtyard. Her breath stilled. He didn't move, didn't look away, didn't blink, just stared. Into her, through her, past every wall she had ever built around her grief and fear. And in his eyes, there it was, a crack in the mask, a flicker of something devastatingly human. Loneliness, longing, recognition. As though he knew her, as though he had always known her, as though the whisper in the West Wing was only half the truth, and the other half stood staring at her from the courtyard, carrying a curse even deeper than hers. Chapter 5. The West Wing called to her long before she dared answer. For hours after the king's brutal, intimate gaze from the courtyard, Elara paced her chamber like a trapped creature. The walls seemed to press inward, whispering the same word again and again.
Go.
Her thoughts churned, restless and burning with a curiosity she had no power to fight. What was the king hiding? Why did the commander tremble in the presence of that sealed corridor? And why did the beast behind the runes know her name? Elara. The whisper slithered through her chamber again.
Soft.
Coaxing. Broken. Her breath hitched. She turned toward the door. Every instinct screamed for her to lock it, to bury herself under blankets, to pretend she did not hear. But instincts had never ruled her life. Her fire had. The curse inside her pulsed, a warm, aching rhythm beneath her ribs, almost like recognition, like longing, like something inside her knew the source of that voice, and craved it. She pressed her palms to her chest, desperate to quiet the burning. It didn't help. A surge of heat pulsed up her throat, into her jaw, behind her eyes. The whisper came again. Elara. That was the moment she knew she could not obey the king, could not obey the commander, could not obey caution. Something beyond fear guided her feet. She opened the door. The corridor was dark,
Silent.
frozen in time. She stepped out, clutching the crimson cloak tighter around her shoulders. Her feet carried her down the winding halls, past sleeping chambers and moonlit balconies, past safety, toward danger, toward truth, toward him, whoever he was. The torches flickered as she passed, as though reacting to her presence. The palace felt awake,
Alive.
watching. When she reached the central hall, the runes on the archway glowed faintly, soft pulses, like a heart beating within stone. Her breath quivered. She stepped closer, the pull inside her tightening. Elara. This time, the whisper carried unmistakable emotion. Not hunger, not rage, not threat. Longing. Her throat constricted. "Who are you?" she whispered. The reply came like a sigh of smoke. "You know me." Her pulse slammed. "No," she breathed, backing away slightly. "I don't." "You do." The voice deepened, trembling, breaking on her name like a plea. "Elara, come." Her knees weakened. Heat flushed through her limbs, her curse stirring uncontrollably. She lifted a trembling hand toward the runes. A spark leapt from her skin, golden, bright, striking the nearest symbol. The rune blazed. The archway trembled. Her breath caught. Something enormous moved on the other side. Something dragging chains. Something with claws. She heard the scrape of talons against stone. A deep, rumbling growl rolled through the corridor, vibrating through her bones. She should run. She should scream. She should listen to every warning the king had given. Instead, she stepped closer. The runes pulsed again, recognizing the fire in her blood. "Elara," the voice rasped. "Touch the door." She couldn't breathe. Her fingers lifted, trembling inches from the glowing symbols. And just as she was about to press her palm to the arch, a hand seized her from behind. "Elara." She gasped as she was yanked back hard, stumbling into a solid chest. The commander. His hood had fallen back from the force, revealing the lower half of his face, sharp jaw, the faintest trace of a scar across his cheek, lips parted in shock. "You don't understand," he hissed, pulling her away from the door. "He will tear through the runes if he senses you any closer." Her heartbeat thrashed, but she couldn't tear her gaze from the archway. "What is he?" she whispered, shaking. "Why does he know me?" The commander dragged her farther down the hall and pressed her against the wall, his breath shaking. "You must stop asking questions," he said. "You must stop." A deafening roar exploded behind them. The hall shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The commander threw his body over hers as fragments of stone cracked from the walls. "Elara. Elara." The beast's voice rose, no longer a whisper, but a bellowing, furious, desperate call. "Elara." She trembled violently under the commander's grip. "He knows I'm here," she whispered, horrified. "He knows your fire," the commander corrected, voice shaking despite his efforts to steady it. "It calls to him. It always has." "What is he?" The commander's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. "The king's curse," he whispered. "And if he breaks free tonight, God's help us all." Her blood ran cold. But something else, something deeper, ran hot. The calling inside her chest tightened painfully. Like recognition. Like connection. Like fate. The commander dragged her away before she could speak again. When they reached her chamber door, he spun her around, his hands gripping her shoulders. "You cannot go near that wing again," he said fiercely. "You cannot answer him. You cannot listen." "But why does he?" "Elara." The commander's voice cracked. "You must trust me." Something in his tone, raw, almost anguished, silenced her. He released her abruptly and stepped back, pulling his hood up so she couldn't see his face. "Sleep," he said. "If you can." Then he vanished down the corridor. Elara stood alone, shaking, her breath shallow. But sleep? Sleep was impossible, because whatever lived behind that sealed archway wasn't simply calling to her. It was chained. It was suffering. It was waiting. And worst of all, it knew her name not as a stranger's, but as a lover's. Elara fell asleep only briefly, slumped against the window's stone ledge. She woke to the sound of a soft knock. She stumbled to the door, exhausted. When she opened it, the Crimson King stood there, alone, unarmored, unmasked by court or throne. His dark hair was damp, curling at the ends. His shirt clung to his chest, open slightly at the collar. Shadows bruised the space beneath his eyes, as though he too, had not slept. Elara, he said quietly. Come with me.
She froze.
Why? His gaze flicked behind her, as if checking whether the walls themselves listened. Because, he murmured, I felt your fire in the West Wing last night. Her breath stumbled. I told you never to go there, he said, stepping closer, his voice low and dangerous. And yet you did. I heard something, she whispered. I know. It said my name. I know. Who is he? She demanded, voice cracking. Silence. The king's jaw tightened. Elara, come. He extended his hand. She hesitated only a moment before placing her palm in his. As always, no burning. No pain. Only heat absorbed, drawn into him like breath into lungs. He led her through the winding halls, past guards who straightened in silent terror as he passed, into the depths of the palace. The deeper they descended, the hotter the air became. Not stifling, but charged.
Alive.
Like walking into the heart of a storm. At last, they reached a door made of obsidian and bone. The king paused. Elara, he said softly, what you see from this point forward will change how you look at me. Forever. Her pulse thundered. Do you want to know the truth? He asked. She inhaled sharply. Yes. The king unlocked the door. It swung open with a guttural groan. Inside was a vast chamber lit by torches burning blue fire. Chains hung from the ceiling. Runes covered every wall. The air shook with restrained magic. And at the center, a massive shape crouched in the darkness. Breathing. Growling.
Alive.
Elara's breath caught. He was enormous. 8 feet tall even while hunched, muscles twisting beneath fur mottled black and silver. His claws were longer than daggers. His fangs glistened in the flickering torchlight. A wolf, but twisted.
Scarred.
More beast than man. And yet, his eyes were golden. Her knees buckled. Those eyes, the same molten gold she had stared into when the king touched her wrist. Elara's voice cracked. No, she breathed. No, that's not. The king stepped beside her. That, he said quietly, is my other form. Her heart stopped. For a moment, she could not breathe. The beast, the monster, the thing that knew her name, was the king. The king's breath trembled. This is the curse I bear, Elara. She stared, trembling violently. But why does this know me? The king looked away. And for the first time she had ever seen, he looked ashamed. I do not know how, he whispered, but the beast recognized your fire the moment we captured you. The beast growled softly, not in rage, but in aching recognition. Elara, her eyes filled with tears. She stumbled backward. The king reached for her, but she jerked away. Don't, she gasped. Don't touch me. Pain flickered across his face, swift, sharp, devastating. Elara, I'm still me, he whispered. No, she whispered back. You're two people. Two halves of the same soul. She shook her head violently. This isn't possible. Elara, he said gently, almost pleading. I wanted to tell you sooner. But the beast, he sensed you. He called for you. And I was afraid if you knew that I'd run, she choked, that you'd answer him. Her breath shuddered. The beast rose slowly, chains rattling. He stepped forward, not toward the king, toward her. Elara, his voice, if it could be called that, rolled through the chamber like thunder wrapped in sorrow. The king shoved an arm out protectively. No, he snapped. Stay back. The beast snarled, not at the king, at the distance between himself and Elara. Her fire pulsed wildly,
Painfully.
longingly. Elara. Her name broke from him in a sound so desperate she felt it in her bones. She took an involuntary step forward. The king grabbed her wrist. Don't, he warned. He will not hurt you on purpose, but the curse is ruthless. I cannot always control him. She trembled violently. Her curse surged up her throat, her palms burning with heat begging to be released. The beast inhaled sharply, recognizing her fire. Elara, please, the king whispered. Do not go closer. She stared at him, beautiful, young, powerful, trembling. Then at the beast, scarred, monstrous, broken and calling for her. "How long?" she whispered. "How long has this curse held you?" The king swallowed. "Since I was 16. Her eyes widened. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why does he know my name?" The king's expression softened into something heartbreakingly vulnerable. "Elara," he said quietly, "I think you are the only thing he has ever recognized as his." Her knees buckled. She hit the floor. The king dropped beside her instantly, hands hovering as if afraid to touch. "Elara, breathe," he urged. "Please." Her breath shook violently, her fire spiraling out of control. And then, the beast roared so loudly the torches guttered. "Elara!" The king whipped around. "No," he shouted. "Stay back." But the beast lunged, chains snapping tight, throwing his massive body toward them. Elara screamed as the king shielded her with his own body. The beast's claws stopped inches from her face. His golden eyes widened with horror, as if terrified of hurting her. "Elara," he whispered, chest heaving. Her breath broke. Her vision blurred. The king pulled her against him, whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you gently. This is too much." But Elara had already crumbled, because she saw it now. The truth in the beast's eyes. Recognition. Longing. A connection deeper than fear or fate. And a question no one had asked yet. What if her fire wasn't a curse? What if it was a bond? A calling? A key? Asterisk, asterisk. She looked at the king, then at his monstrous other half, and whispered, "What am I to you?" The king closed his eyes. The beast answered, "My mate." Chapter 6. Silence fell so heavily after the beast's confession that Elara thought the air itself had shattered.
Mate.
The word hung between them like a blade suspended by a single trembling thread. A fate. A sentence. A promise. A ruin. The Crimson King froze completely, as though time had struck him across the face. His body went rigid, breath trapped somewhere deep inside his chest. His golden eyes, already molten, flared with something darker.
Pain. Fear.
Possession.
Denial.
Longing. All tangled into one unbearable expression. "Elara," he whispered, voice breaking in a way she had never imagined possible. "Please, do not listen to him." She stared at him, trembling. "Why not?" "Because he is not rational," the king snapped softly, not taking his eyes off her. "He is instinct. He is hunger. He is what I become when the curse strips away my mind." The beast snarled, not at Elara, but at the king's words. A growl thick with rage and heartbreak. "Elara, come," he murmured, almost pleading, chains straining violently as he tried again to reach her. The king stepped between them, shielding her with his body. "No," he commanded sharply. "You will not touch her." The beast roared, shaking the walls. Chains cracked. Runes blazed. But he did not attack. He only stared, fixated on Elara. "Elara, mine?" The king's voice turned harsh with despair. He does not understand what he's saying. Her pulse thundered. Her knees felt weak. Her fire surged uncontrollably inside her chest. She gasped, clutching her stomach as heat pulsed outward. "I can feel something." The king whipped around and caught her by the shoulders. "Elara, look at me." She couldn't. Her head spun. Her vision blurred. "Elara," he repeated, his voice cracking. "Look at me." She forced her gaze upward, into his golden, fractured, terrified eyes. And the world stilled. The fire inside her chest, her curse, responded to him. To his hands. To the heat he absorbed effortlessly. To the power inside him that called to something buried within her soul. The king drew in a sharp breath, visibly shaken.
No.
He stumbled back a step. "No, no, no. This cannot be happening." Her breath hitched.
What?
He raked a trembling hand through his hair. "Elara," he whispered, voice thick with dread. "Tell me what you feel." "I feel," she swallowed, heat. And something pulling.
Toward you.
And toward him. like two threads tied around my ribs. The king closed his eyes in anguish. A sound tore from the beast, half growl, half wounded plea. Elara, her knees buckled again. She reached out blindly. The king caught her. His touch, always absorbing, grounding, calmed the burning in her veins instantly. Warmth sank into him, drawn from her like river water into cracked earth. He inhaled sharply, jaw clenching as her fire poured into him. Elara, he whispered against her hair, you are reacting to the bond. Her breath shattered. What bond? He stepped back, not far, but far enough that the distance between them felt like a blade cutting flesh. Then he said the words that should have killed her. You are the destined mate of the Crimson King. Elara stumbled backward, hitting the cold stone wall. No, she whispered. That's not possible. I burn alphas. I kill wolves. I'm a curse. His chest rose and fell with a shudder. The prophecy calls you the flame bearer. She stared. What prophecy? The king hesitated, not because he didn't know, but because he didn't want to speak it aloud. The beast snarled again, chains rattling. Elara, mine? The king flinched as though struck. Elara, he whispered painfully. Look at me. Not him.
Me.
She forced her gaze back to the king. He exhaled shakily. There's a story, he said quietly. An ancient curse legend. It speaks of a girl born with living fire in her veins. A girl whose touch destroys every alpha except one. Her heart slammed. The one she is bound to, the king continued. By fate, by fire, and by death. She blinked.
Death.
He stepped closer. Elara, listen to me carefully. Every hair on her body stood on end. My curse splits me into two beings, the king said. The man you know and the beast you fear. She shook her head. The beast wasn't afraid of me. He sounded like he loved you. The king finished quietly. Her breath stopped. Yes, Elara, he whispered. That is what terrifies me most. She shook her head again, harder.
No.
No, none of this makes sense. It will, the king said softly. If you let me explain. She didn't reply. So he continued. 1,000 years ago, a wolf god cursed my bloodline. Every king of my line loses himself to the beast within. Every generation, the curse worsens. I am the first to lose control completely. Her stomach twisted. Then, is there a cure? He swallowed. Yes. Hope flared, not fully, but enough to breathe. What is it? She asked. His eyes locked onto hers, gold molten, burning with grief and longing. The curse can only be broken, he whispered, when the destined mate unites the man and the beast. Her breath shook. Unites how? Heat flashed in his gaze, raw, intimate, terrifying. Through bond, he said softly. Through touch. Through choice. Through surrender. Her heart thrashed. And if the mate rejects the bond, she whispered. The king's face broke. The beast moaned, a sound like a wounded god. Elara, the king breathed, voice cracked with anguish. If you reject me, I die. Her blood froze. And the beast, he added quietly, will survive only long enough to destroy everything I ever loved, including you. She staggered back. No, she whispered. That cannot be true. Fate can't demand that. Fate demands far worse than this, the king murmured. Elara pressed herself against the wall, shaking. But why me? She whispered. Why my fire? Why does it burn every alpha except you? Even your guards, even the commander. The king went rigid. Elara, he said slowly. What do you mean? What about the commander? He touched me, she said. In the village. During the avalanche. Last night. And he never burned. The king stared. And stared. And something inside him snapped. He turned sharply toward the beast, as if confirming something impossible. Then back to her. Elara, he whispered, voice hollow, broken. Touches from your destined mate don't burn. She froze. Your fire knows him. The king continued, each word quieter than the last. Your curse yields to him. I touched both of you, she whispered. The king closed his eyes. Yes. So which of you? Both turned to look at her. The king.
The beast.
And both said, Me. Elara's heart nearly stopped. No, she said violently. No, this is wrong. Both of you cannot be. Elara, the king whispered. I am both.
And she realized.
He wasn't two souls. He was one soul torn in half. One destiny split into beast and man. One mate bond stretched between fractured pieces of the same being. Her fire recognized the whole, not the halves. Her breath shattered into pieces. I can't, she gasped. I can't do this. I can't be responsible for saving me, the king whispered. For killing me, the beast growled softly. For binding us together? Both said in different voices. No, she cried. For choosing between you. The king stepped closer. You don't choose between us, Elara, he said, voice gentle now. You choose me. But you're one man, he whispered. One curse. One soul in two bodies. Her legs finally gave out. The king caught her before she hit the floor. He held her, strong, warm, steady, absorbing every ripple of her fire. Her pulse raced wildly as he whispered against her hair. I have known for years the prophecy would end with my death. I made peace with it. But I never expected fate to give me a mate before taking me away. She trembled violently in his arms. Elara, he breathed, I don't want to die. The beast whimpered, a monstrous, broken sound, as if echoing the same confession. I don't want to lose you, the king whispered. I don't want you taken, the beast growled. Their voices overlapped again, twisting around her like flames and shadows. She realized then. She was not caught between two monsters. She was caught between two halves of the same man, both of whom needed her to survive. And fate demanded she either save him or destroy him. Elara, the king whispered, cupping her face, you are the only one who can break this curse. Her breath shook.
How?
His thumbs brushed her cheeks gently. By accepting the bond, he whispered. Her heart lunged. Accepting the bond meant surrender. Surrender meant intimacy. Intimacy meant touching a man who absorbed her fire like breath, and touching a beast who whispered her name from chains. Her knees trembled. And if I refuse, she whispered. The king closed his eyes, jaw tightening with grief. Then the beast will break free. Her blood froze. And I, he whispered, will die the moment he does. Elara stared at him, the man whose touch didn't burn her, whose curse didn't frighten her as much as his tenderness, whose eyes held centuries of longing, and saw the truth. This was not a threat. This was a plea, a confession, a prophecy. She whispered, Why me? The king leaned his forehead against hers. His voice trembled. Because you are the only one strong enough to love both halves of me. Her breath hitched. The beast groaned softly, chains rattling. Elara. The king's lips brushed her temple as he whispered. And the only one powerful enough to kill me if you choose not to. Chapter 7. They did not return to the throne room after the truth shattered the air between them. The king brought her instead to a side chamber, an intimate, candlelit hall with a single long table and a balcony overlooking the storm-churned mountains. The air was warm here, thick with spices and firelight, a stark contrast to the icy dread still gripping her chest. Elara, he murmured, ushering her toward a seat, you need rest. And food.
She didn't sit.
She couldn't sit. Not after learning she was the destined mate of the most powerful alpha in existence. Not after looking into the eyes of his monstrous half and feeling recognition. She stared at the king, her voice barely more than breath. What happens now? The king exhaled slowly, as though he had been waiting for that question all night. Now, he said, you try to breathe, and I give you time.
Time.
As though time was mercy. As though time would make her less terrified of the bond tying her fate to his. But before she could respond, the doors slammed open. A guard rushed in, panting. Your Majesty, there's trouble in the great hall. The king stiffened. What kind of trouble? Foreign envoys arrived unannounced. They claim they've brought tribute. Tribute. The king's voice sharpened. At this hour? Yes, your majesty. They insist on presenting it personally. Elara sensed it immediately, something wrong. A tension under the guard's words. The king must have sensed it too. His eyes flicked to her. You stay behind me. I wasn't planning on doing anything else, she muttered. But the king didn't smile. He didn't even blink. He took her wrist gently, his grip absorbing her fire, quieting the frantic pulse beneath her skin, and guided her through the palace toward the great hall. Torchlight flickered with strange colors. Guards whispered in uneasy tones. The palace felt different, charged, unsettled. As they approached, the king slowed. Elara, he murmured, don't leave my side. He didn't need to say more. The double doors opened, and chaos prepared to strike. The great hall was filled with guests. Dozens of foreign envoys stood scattered across the polished floor, cloaks dusted with snow, weapons strapped to their belts, faces carved with tension. They were supposedly emissaries from the Nightfall Dominion, a neutral territory known for its rigid politics. But nothing about their presence felt diplomatic. The king stepped forward, radiating command. You arrive without summons, he said, voice calm but cold. Explain yourselves. One envoy stepped forward, tall, thin, smile too sharp. Your Majesty, he said with a bow, we come bearing tribute for your reign. The king's jaw tightened. Nightfall has never sent tribute. True. The envoy spread his hands. But the world shifts. Alliances change. The king's fingers twitched, once, barely noticeable. Elara felt it in her chest. A warning. A ripple of unease. The envoy snapped his fingers. Two guards dragged forward a massive chest, setting it before the king. Open it, the king commanded. The envoy bowed again. As you wish. He lifted the lid. Elara gasped. The chest was filled not with gold but with weapons.
Swords.
Daggers. Arrows tipped with something dark. Poison? Venom? Magic? No, worse. Silver. The king's head snapped toward the envoy. This is not tribute. No, the man replied softly. It is preparation. For what? The king growled. The envoy smiled. For your downfall. Then, everything exploded. The envoys drew weapons in a single synchronized movement. Arrows flew. Guards shouted. Chaos erupted like thunder. The king grabbed Elara, dragging her down behind a toppled table as a silver blade arced through the air, embedding itself where her head had been. She gasped. The king snarled. Stay down. But Elara had already seen something he hadn't. A second wave of attackers flooding into the hall from the side entrances. Too many. Too fast. Too well-timed. This wasn't an attack. This was an execution. The king rose with supernatural speed. His hands glowed faintly, heat rising from his skin like smoke. Protect the flame-bearer, he roared. Guards rushed in.
Swords clashed.
Wolves shifted. Blood sprayed across the polished floors. The envoy with the razor smile lifted a silver crossbow and aimed at Elara.
She didn't think.
Didn't breathe. Her fire surged, wild, uncontrollable, bursting from her skin in a blinding wave of heat. The envoy screamed as his weapon melted in his hands. He staggered back, clutching blistered flesh. The king spun around, eyes wide, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Recognition.
Awe.
Possession. Elara, he began. But he didn't finish. Because an assassin leapt from the balcony above, blade aimed for the king's throat. Elara screamed, and her fire exploded. A shockwave of heat tore through the hall, slamming into the assassin midair. He dropped like a stone, body convulsing as his armor scorched black. But the fire didn't stop. Elara's curse erupted in a wildfire, lashing in every direction, silver weapons melting, attackers collapsing, guards shouting in terror. Elara, stop, the king shouted, struggling through the heat. I can't, she cried, falling to her knees. It won't stop, it won't stop. Her palms burned. Her chest burned. Her vision burned. The fire wanted out. It wanted release. It wanted blood. Elara. The king grabbed her shoulders. He didn't burn. Not even a little. His touch grounded her instantly. "Look at me," he commanded.
She did.
And for a moment, the fire abated. But not fully. A last wave of uncontrolled heat shot outward and struck the wrong target. A guard, loyal, brave, unshifted, screamed as fire engulfed him. "No!" Elara sobbed. The king whipped around, but it was too late. The guard collapsed, smoking, motionless. Silence crashed over the hall. Every eye turned toward Elara.
Shock.
Horror.
Fear.
Even the king froze. "Elara," he whispered, voice filled with something unbearably fragile. "Please," she begged, shaking. "I didn't mean to, I didn't know, I didn't." "Elara." He reached for her. But the surviving envoys saw their chance. "Now," one shouted. 3 silver blades shot through the air, straight toward the king. Elara moved without thinking. She threw herself at him, pushing him backward. Just as the blade struck her fire directly, the heat exploded outward like a sunburst. The envoys were thrown against the far wall. Elara collapsed on top of the king, gasping. His arms instinctively wrapped around her, pulling her tight against his chest. "Elara," he whispered, voice breaking, "you saved me." Tears stung her eyes. But the hall had gone silent again. Not with awe.
With dread.
With judgment. With fear. "Elara," whispered one guard. "Killed one of us?" "I didn't," she choked. But the damage was done. The whispering spread like poison. "Curseborn, murderer. She's dangerous. She'll kill us all. She must be contained." The king rose slowly, still holding her. "Silence," he growled. The hall quieted instantly, but fear still rippled through the air. The king looked down at Elara, trembling, terrified, burned out and hollow. "Elara," he whispered softly, "you need to come with me." She flinched, his face twisted in pain. "Elara, I'm not angry." Her voice cracked. "Everyone else is. I don't care about everyone else." But she did. And she couldn't unsee the burned guard. Couldn't unhear his scream. Couldn't unknow the horror in every eye staring at her. She pushed away from the king. "Elara." "No," she choked. "Stay back. Please." He froze. Her rejection hit him like a physical blow. "Elara, listen to me." But she was already stumbling away, breath breaking, fire flickering chaotically across her palms. The king reached toward her and stopped. Because she looked at him with something he had feared since the moment they met. Terror. Of herself. And of what she was becoming.
And of what she meant to him.
"Elara," he whispered, devastated, "don't run." She looked at him. Beautiful, powerful, cursed, broken. And whispered, "I have to." Then she fled. And the kingdom erupted into a hunt. Some to save her. Others to kill her. And one king, who would tear the world apart to bring her home. Chapter 8. Elara didn't remember how long she ran. She only remembered the cold. Cold that sliced through her lungs like broken glass. Cold that bit into her exposed hands until she couldn't feel the blisters beneath her skin. Cold that swallowed the screams still echoing from the great hall. Her feet carried her through corridors she'd only glimpsed in daylight. Vast, twisting, endless. Her shoulders slammed into stone. A tapestry brushed her cheek. A torch guttered violently as her passing heat disturbed the air. Every shadow felt like an enemy. Every flicker of movement, real or imagined, made her flinch. Every breath came too fast, too sharp, too hot. Her fire pulsed dangerously. The king had told her it responded to emotion. Right now, it responded to terror. "Please stop," she begged her own body. "Please, please stop burning." But her pulse drummed with molten heat. She wasn't afraid of being caught. She was afraid of burning someone else. Afraid of killing again. Afraid of seeing horror in the king's eyes if she hurt him. That fear was worse than death. When she finally burst through a side gate into the mountainside courtyard, the shock of freezing night air hit her like a fist. She staggered, clutching her chest as her fire screamed beneath her ribs. Snow fell in heavy, silent sheets. She collapsed onto her knees. Her breath fogged the air as she whispered, "I can't stay. I can't. I'll destroy him." The wind didn't argue. It only howled. Behind her, alarms rang through the capital. Deep, brassy bells that echoed off the mountains. At first, she thought they were calling for the fallen guard. Then she realized they were calling for her. She stumbled to her feet and fled into the night. But even as she ran, the bells carried across the city. Fugitive, curse-born, dangerous. Her heart cracked. She didn't stop running until the palace vanished behind the cliffs and the frozen forest swallowed her. Only then did she collapse into the snow, heaving, shaking, fire seething beneath her skin. She pressed her palms into the snow just to cool them. Steam rose instantly. "I can't go back," she whispered. "I'll kill him. I'll kill everyone." She squeezed her eyes shut. But even as the panic consumed her, a pulse throbbed in her chest. Not her fire. Something else. Something like a heartbeat. Not hers.
His.
Her breath froze. The king's heartbeat beat inside her ribs.
Faint. Distant. Weak.
Her eyes flew open. "No," she whispered. No, what's happening?" The answer hit her with a force that nearly knocked her over. The mate bond responds to distance. It responds to separation. She had left him, and it was killing him. Memories surged. His face breaking when she pushed him away. His voice cracking, "Elara, don't run." The beast roaring her name as she fled. She clutched her chest. His heartbeat trembled.
Thinned.
Faltered.
No.
"No," she cried, stumbling to her feet. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare die, because of me." Her voice dissolved into the storm, but his heartbeat inside her flickered again, weaker than before. The mate bond pulsed violently. Pain ripped through her spine, forcing her to the ground. She gasped, clutching her ribs. What is this?" The world blurred.
Snow. Trees. Cliffs.
Darkness. Then, a whisper. Not the beasts. Not the kings. Something older. The mate who flees kills the king slowly. The prophecy. She screamed. "No! I didn't know. I didn't want this. I don't want him to die." But fate was deaf. And destiny was cruel. Far behind her, inside the throne hall, the king staggered. His hand shot out to grip a pillar. Guards rushed to his side. "Your Majesty." He waved them off, breath shaking. "I'm fine," he lied. He wasn't. His vision dimmed at the edges. His pulse faltered. His chest burned, not from fire, but from emptiness. "Elara," he whispered. His voice cracked. The beast inside him roared in agony, slamming against the walls of its cage.
She's gone. She's gone.
She's gone. The king's knees buckled. He caught himself barely before he fell. The commander burst into the hall, hood gone, face carved with panic. "Your Majesty, your pulse." "I know," the king rasped. "This is the bond," the commander hissed. "It's rejecting her absence." "I know," the king shouted. The entire hall fell silent. He pressed a hand to his chest, choking on a gasp. It felt like claws ripping through him from the inside. The commander grabbed his arms, lowering his voice. "Sire, if she gets farther, I will die," the king finished. The commander's jaw tightened. "Then we must find her before dawn." The king closed his eyes. A single tear slipped down his cheek. "Find her," he whispered, "before the beast tears free. Because if the beast got out now, in this state, with this agony, he wouldn't just destroy the kingdom. He would hunt Elara. And he wouldn't stop." Miles away, Elara fell to her knees again. Pain ripped through her chest, a mirrored echo of the king's agony. She screamed into the storm. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The wind swallowed her cries. She pressed her forehead into the snow, struggling to breathe as the bond constricted around her heart like a noose. Then, footsteps.
Slow. Crunching.
Approaching through the snow. Elara lifted her head weakly. The commander stood before her, snow coating his cloak, eyes burning with urgency. Her breath hitched. How did you find me? His voice cracked.
The bond, he said.
It doesn't only tie you to the king.
She stared.
What do you mean? He stepped closer. Elara, you felt the king's heartbeat through it. Yes, she whispered. Did you feel mine? Her body went still. What? The commander crouched in front of her, gripping her shoulders gently. Elara, he said softly, I am the king's shadow. His second form's echo. His cursed half-sentinel. When you feel him, you feel me. Her pulse stuttered. She whispered, You feel me too?
His jaw flexed.
Yes. And the king. He feels everything. The commander cut in quietly. Your fear.
Your pain.
Your distance. He hesitated. And your choice. Her breath shook. I didn't choose, she whispered. Yes, the commander said softly. You did.
No.
No, I didn't. I panicked, I ran. I didn't mean to hurt him. Elara, he murmured, lifting her chin. Intent doesn't matter to destiny. She trembled violently. I have to go back. Yes. But I'm scared. I know. I might hurt him again. I know. What if I kill him? She whispered. The commander swallowed hard. What if, he murmured, you save him instead? Elara's breath broke. The storm roared around them. And for the first time since she ran, she felt something besides fear. Resolve.
Weak.
Shaking. But alive. Take me to him, she whispered. The commander didn't hesitate. He scooped her up, strong arms lifting her effortlessly, and began carrying her back toward the palace. Her head rested against his chest. And she heard it. The king's heartbeat. Faint. Unsteady. Flickering like a dying flame. She whispered. Hold on, please hold on. The commander's voice trembled above her. He's trying, Elara. But he won't last long. By the time they reached the palace gates, screams echoed through the halls. Guards ran in panic. Servants fled. Wolves howled in terror. The commander set her on her feet and pushed her forward. Go, he urged. He needs you. Elara stumbled inside. She followed the sound of destruction. Cracked stone, splintered wood, shattering glass. The king was in the central hall, kneeling, hands pressed to the floor, body shaking violently. Golden cracks of magic rippled down his arms. His shadow writhed, growing larger, breaking shape, no longer matching his form. He was losing control. The beast was rising. Elara, he gasped, sensing her presence instantly. Elara, don't come closer. She ran to him anyway. The commander shouted behind her, Elara, wait. But she ignored them both. She dropped to her knees in front of the king and grabbed his trembling hands. The moment their skin touched, his fire, her fire, the bond, all three ignited. His power surged into her. Her heat surged into him. The beast roared inside him. The bond snapped tight like a whip. Elara, he choked out, you shouldn't be here. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm sorry. I should never have left. I didn't know. He shook his head violently. No. It's not your fault. I should have told you everything sooner. His voice broke into a strangled cry as his spine arched, claws pushing beneath his skin. Elara, he gasped. The beast. I can't hold it. Go, run. She gripped his face between her hands. No, she whispered fiercely. You are not alone. You will never be alone again. His golden eyes widened. Elara, her fire wrapped around him. His heat enveloped her. The bond pulsed with painful, luminous force. And the beast inside him stilled. Just for a moment. Just long enough for him to whisper, I knew you would come back. Then he collapsed into her arms. Unconscious.
Alive.
Barely. Guards rushed in. The commander knelt beside them. Chaos erupted behind her. But all Elara could feel was the king's faint pulse beating against her palm.
Alive.
Because she returned. Barely alive. Because she left. Her tears fell onto his face. He didn't stir. Elara, the commander said quietly, you saved him. No, she whispered. stroking the king's hair. Not yet. The commander's eyes darkened. Then what now? Elara lifted her head. Her fire glowed beneath her skin. Not wild, not burning. Awake, aware, chosen. We fix this, she said softly. The curse? The commander asked. No, Elara whispered, staring down at the man who was both king and monster. His soul.
Chapter 9.
The palace trembled, as though it sensed what was coming. Elara stood at the threshold of the king's private sanctum, the commander beside her, breathless from dragging the king's unconscious form through collapsing corridors. Guards had scattered. Servants had fled. Even the torches seemed to shrink back, flames quivering like frightened animals. Inside the room, moonlight spilled through a fractured skylight, illuminating the king's body on the stone floor. Beautiful, broken, barely breathing. Elara, whispered the commander, you must prepare yourself. For what? She whispered back, swallowing hard. A violent thud shook the floorboards. Then another. Then a roar, deep, half human, half wolf, half something not of this earth. Elara's heart seized. He's shifting, the commander said. But not fully. She stared through the open doorway, breath stuttering. What does that mean? It means, the commander said quietly, he's caught between his two forms. Between man and beast. Between life and curse. A shadow moved across the broken ceiling. A claw, too large for any wolf, scraped stone above them, sending dust raining down. Elara gasped. The commander seized her arm gently. Elara, look at me. She forced herself to meet his eyes, dark, storm-filled, weighted with centuries of burden. For years, he said softly, he feared this moment. The halfway shift. It's the most dangerous part of the curse. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Dangerous for who? The commander didn't answer.
He didn't need to.
A violent crash split the air. Stone shattered. Light exploded. A monstrous silhouette dropped into the room. Elara staggered backward as the king, and yet not the king, rose slowly from the rubble. He was enormous, taller than any man should be, but not yet beast enough to crawl on claws. His body rippled with fur that faded into flesh, shifting with every breath. His spine arched, bones cracking audibly. His hands, no longer human, not yet fully monstrous, clenched around the broken floor. But his face, oh, gods. His face was the most terrifying part. Half wolf, half man, half agony. And his eyes. His eyes were gold. Not dull, not fading, blazing. Elara. Her name tore from his throat like a wounded storm. The commander stepped in front of her, arms outstretched. Sire, listen to me. The creature slammed into him with a force that cracked bone. The commander flew backward, hitting a pillar so hard the entire structure trembled. He collapsed onto one knee, blood dripping from his mouth. Elara cried out, Commander. He raised a trembling hand. Stay back. The creature turned toward her. The king's voice echoed through a mouth filled with fangs. Elara. Her heartbeat stuttered painfully. Because even now, even monstrous, even dying, even unraveling, he said her name as if it was prayer. Her feet moved on their own. No, the commander shouted hoarsely. You can't. He can't control himself. He doesn't have to, Elara whispered, stepping forward. The creature lunged. The commander screamed. And Elara didn't move. She didn't flinch. She didn't run. Because in that split second, she felt everything. His fear. His agony. His terror of losing her. His certainty she would die at his hands. His fractured soul screaming as the curse tore him apart. Elara, run, he roared, claws slashing toward her. I'm not afraid of you, she cried. The claws stopped inches from her throat. Time froze. The creature trembled violently, muscles straining, breath rasping, gold eyes wide with horror. Elara, the word broke from him like a sob. Her lips quivered. You're in pain, she whispered. Let me help you. The creature stumbled back, roaring in agony. Elara, and oh, Curse will kill us both. Then we die together, she whispered. The creature's body shook violently. His legs buckled. Magic rippled through the air, dark, ancient, blood-bound. The commander coughed blood, eyes wide. Elara, if you touch him, like this, the curse could devour you. Or I could save him, she said, stepping closer. Elara, stop! Both man and beast voices echoed inside the creature's fractured form. But she didn't stop. Everything inside her, the curse, the fire, the bond, the instinct, pushed her forward. She lifted her hands. The creature roared so loudly the window shattered. Elara, don't. She placed her palms, burning, trembling, against his chest. And the world exploded. A shockwave of fire and shadow burst outward, tearing through the room, knocking the commander flat against the floor. Walls cracked. Pillars groaned. The ceiling fractured further. Magic surged, white-hot flame from her, black iron shadow from him, both colliding in a violent storm. Elara screamed. So did the king.
So did the beast.
Her fire poured into him uncontrollably, a flood of heat she'd never unleashed before, scorching, cleansing, searing through fur and skin and bone. Instead of burning him, it sank into him, like water poured into cracked earth, like light filling a void. His body jerked violently. Elara, stop, you'll die, he roared. But she held on. Her fingers dug into his fur and skin. Her forehead pressed against his chest. Her fire poured out in waves. She whispered through gritted teeth, I am not your executioner. I am your cure. The creature convulsed. His claws raked the floor. His spine arched. His chest heaved violently beneath her palms. Her fire glowed brighter, white, blinding, divine. The commander shielded his face, yelling over the storm, Elara, you're rewriting the curse. You're forcing it to choose. She didn't hear him. She heard only the king's heartbeat struggling beneath her hands. She screamed, not in pain, but in defiance of the fate that had tried to destroy him. Her fire surged again, and something inside the creature broke. The creature roared, but the sound changed, shifted,
Softened. Humanized.
Magic spiraled around them in rings of fire and shadow. The beast howled as fur burned away in streaks of white flame. Bones snapped back into place. Claws retracted. Fangs shrank. The man inside him screamed, a raw, terrified sound, as the curse tightened around his human form, refusing to release its hold. Elara, 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 he choked, voice overlapping with the beast's and then splitting apart again. Her fire burned hotter. Take me instead, she cried to the curse. Take my fire, take everything, but let him breathe. The shadow magic writhed violently, swirling around both of them. Then, an explosion of silence. Utter silence. The creature collapsed. Elara collapsed with him. Her fire flickered. His shadow glowed. Both energies intertwined.
Merging.
The commander forced himself upright, staggering toward them. Elara, stop. You've gone too far. The curse is breaking too fast. Your fire will kill you. She ignored him, because she felt something happening beneath her palms. The king's heartbeat.
Steady.
Strong. Unified. She opened her eyes. He lay beneath her. No longer beast. No longer fractured. A new form. One being. One soul. One king. His golden eyes blinked open. And he looked at her. Not with hunger, not with fear, not with instinct, but with astonished recognition. Elara, he whispered. Her breath trembled. Are you? He lifted a hand, a human hand, and touched her cheek gently. She didn't burn him. She didn't sear him. His fingers sank into her heat, as if made to hold it. Elara, he whispered again, voice breaking. You saved me. A sob escaped her. I thought, she choked, her forehead falling against his. I thought I lost you. He cupped her face in both hands, pulling her closer. You came back, he breathed. You came back for me. I will always come back, she whispered. Then, The king drew her into his arms. Fire wrapped around them. Shadow faded. Fate unraveled. And destiny, finally,
bowed. Chapter 10.
For the first time since she'd stepped into the Crimson Palace, the world was quiet. Not silent, but quiet in a way that felt alive. Breathing. Awake. Listening. As though every stone and shadow was waiting to witness what came next. Elara knelt beside the king, no longer man torn apart by a curse, no longer beast bound in blood runes, but one being, whole and unbroken beneath the pale moonlight spilling through the fractured skylight. His chest rose steadily. His breath no longer dragged with strain. His body, still powerful, still wolf-touched, was no longer twisting against itself. He was new,
Perfect.
terrifying, beautiful. Her fire hummed in recognition. Elara, his voice, once two, once fractured, once screamed through fangs, was whole.
Smooth. Deep.
Wrapped in warmth and shadow. She inhaled sharply. "Can you sit up?" He didn't answer with words. He reached for her. The moment their hands met, the bond lit like a constellation inside her chest. Warmth unfurled through her ribs. Her fire leaned toward him instinctively, seeking, recognizing, choosing. He rose slowly, using her hands to steady himself. Their faces hovered inches apart. "Elara," he whispered, "you saved my life." She shook her head.
No.
"We saved each other." His jaw tightened with emotion. He cupped her cheek gently, and this time, she didn't flinch. Didn't fear burning him. Didn't fear losing control. Her fire greeted his warmth like home. "Elara," he murmured again, brushing his thumb along her cheekbone, "you held me together when I was breaking." Her throat tightened. "I will never forget that." Behind them, the commander finally exhaled, long, shaking, relieved. "I thought we lost you both," he whispered. The king looked at him, really looked, and nodded once, something unspoken passing between them. Then his eyes returned to Elara, never leaving her again. The king stood fully now, testing his weight, rolling his shoulders. Firelight rippled across the patterns shifting under his skin, wolf shadow woven with human form, all of it harmonizing in a way that radiated power. Elara rose with him. The commander stepped forward quietly. "Your Majesty, your people need to see you. They fear you died when the beast broke half the palace." "I know," the king said, voice steady, steadier than she'd ever heard. He reached for Elara's hand. "Elara walks with me." She blinked, startled. "Me?" He tightened his grip lightly. "You are the reason I breathe tonight." Her cheeks burned. Her fire pulsed shyly. The commander looked away politely, though his eyes softened. The king pulled Elara close, guiding her through the ruined hallways. The palace looked like a war zone, scorched pillars, shattered windows, claw marks carved into stone. Guards froze at the sight of them. Some fell to one knee instantly. Others gasped. A few wept. "He's alive. The king, he survived the curse. And the girl, she's with him." The king raised a hand. "My people," he said, voice carrying effortlessly across the wreckage, "the curse is broken." Gasps rippled across the hall like a tidal wave. A young guard stammered, "Your Majesty, your eyes, they're different. Golden still, but not wild. Bright, not blazing. Human, not divided." The king nodded once. "Because I am different." He turned, and Elara felt his gaze on her without even looking. "She freed me." Dozens of heads turned toward her. Some eyes softened. Some widened with awe. Some tears glistened. Some fear loosened. But none held hatred. Not anymore. The king led her out into the moonlit courtyard. The entire capital had gathered. Wolves, humans, elders, children. All silent. All expecting the worst. The commander stepped forward first. "Behold," he called out, "your king." The crowd gasped as the king emerged. Strong.
Whole. Alive.
Not a monster. Not a beast. Not a broken man. A king reborn. The torches flared as though bowing. Crimson banners billowed from the palace towers. Wolves shifted instinctively, noses to the air, sensing the new magic in him. A roar of awe rose from the crowd, not fear, but reverence. Then the king raised Elara's hand. The crowd fell silent again. "This girl," he said, voice ringing across the stone, "the one you called curse-born," Elara stiffened, "is the flame-bearer of prophecy." Shock rippled. "She is not a curse," the king continued. "She is the reason your king lives. She is the one destiny chose to break the blood-bound chains on my soul." His grip tightened gently around hers. "She is your future queen." Elara's breath stopped. Gasps echoed everywhere. Cries of surprise. Sobs of relief. A few joyful howls pierced the night. Elara's heart pounded so loudly she thought the whole kingdom could hear it. "Your queen," she whispered, eyes wide. The king turned to her fully, lowering his forehead to hers. "You don't have to accept tonight," he whispered softly. "Or tomorrow. Or ever if you don't choose me." He lifted her hand and pressed it against his heart. "But Elara, you broke my curse. You held me together. You saw both halves of me and still reached for me. I will choose you every lifetime." Her eyes glistened. "And if you choose me," he whispered, "I will love you until the stars drown." Her breath trembled. Time slowed. The crowd waited. The commander watched quietly, pride softening his features. The king's golden eyes burned into hers, not demanding, not claiming, but hoping. "Elara," he murmured, "what do you choose?" She swallowed hard. The flames inside her, the curse she once hated, warmed, flickered, softened, glowed. She placed her free hand on his cheek. "I choose," she whispered. The king's breath caught. "I choose you." His eyes closed, relief, love, devotion flooding his expression. And when he opened them again, golden fire curled through their depths. "Elara," he kissed her. Not hesitant, not restrained. A kiss that poured a lifetime of longing into her body, lighting every edge of her with fire and warmth. Her knees nearly buckled. His arm wrapped around her waist, holding her steady. Her fire surged joyfully, wrapping around them like soft ribbons of heat. The crowd erupted, howls, cheers, cries of triumph echoing through the courtyard. Magic spiraled above them in shimmering waves, flame and shadow merging into brilliant gold. The mate bond snapped fully into place. Whole. Complete. Unbreakable. The kingdom bowed. The king held her close. And Elara, once curse-born, once feared, once alone, took her place at his side. Not as a weapon. Not as a prophecy. Not as a destiny. As his equal. His flame. His mate. His queen. If you love this story, please subscribe to my channel. Your support helps me create more stories, more worlds, more characters, and more fantasy series for you. Comment your favorite line. Tell me which character you want a spin-off for, and hit subscribe so you never miss the next story.